It's back and it's all over the news and forums again. We have a new record DBSS price. This time, the Peak, a DBSS project in Toa Payoh, has sold for $1.6 million. A new record for DBSS homes. DBSS homes are considered HDB units, just that they are built and designed by private developers. But why are they so expensive, and do they warrant the steep price tag like this one here?
Boy, have you lost your mind, cause I'll help you find it.
Unlike an EC, DBSS projects follow the same set of rules as a normal HDB. So then, are they just overrated HDBs? Are these units overpriced, or is it just this unit specifically? Once again, there has been much talk generated in forums and much sensation generated in news articles. So far, they're either negative or biased. But one thing that's been missing is sound, unbiased commentary, and I'm hoping to fill that void with this video. By the end of this video, you understand what a DBSS flat is and why they are sold at a premium. You also understand what I like and dislike about this unit, whether I think this unit was overpriced, and if this is something that I would personally buy. In order to understand whether this unit is overpriced, let's first look at the facts laid out by the article. The article mentioned a 13-year-old DBSS sold for $1.6 million. The project is called The Peak and it is in Toa Payoh. It is located between Braddell and Toa Payoh MRT stations. It is a high floor unit around the 20th floor. It is around 1,200 square feet, meaning it is a 5-room flat. The Peak is a DBSS project that has been known for its high prices. But what exactly is DBSS? To understand what the fuss is all about, let's first understand what DBSS stands for and what it means. If you're new here, my name is Daryl, and in this channel, we talk about real estate in Singapore. Remember to like and subscribe for more unbiased property videos. The Design, Build and Sell Scheme, or DBSS, was introduced by HDB in 2005. Flats under this scheme were considered public housing, but they were developed by private developers. That means that on paper, they are considered HDB projects, but they are not built or developed by HDB themselves. In this case, the Peak was developed by Hoi Hub Realty, a private developer. Other past projects by Hoi Hub Realty includes the likes of 100 Palms Residence and Kovan Regency. Some of their newer projects includes the likes of Novo Place, The Continuum, Key Residences, and Sophia Hills. While these DBSS projects are developed by private or condo developers, they don't have the usual condo facilities like a pool or a gym. But on the bright side, unlike a condo, there isn't a monthly maintenance fee that needs to be. There were 13 DBSS projects in total. Some examples are Pasir Ris 1 at Pasir Ris, Trevellis at Clementi, Natural Loft at Bishan, City View at Boon Keng, Park Central at Ang Mo Kio, and of course the Peak at Toa Payoh. The DBSS scheme got a bad reputation in Pasir Ris due to quality issues and most notably the very narrow corridors. Personally, I've also viewed some DBSS projects myself and considered them for my own stay. I felt that these projects were okay, so I think that it actually depends on the developer of the specific project. Despite the mixed reception, DBSS projects still commanded really good prices and appreciated well over the years. And that brings us to the heart of the Mothership article. I feel that they commanded their high prices not because of their DBSS status, but rather because of their premium location. Take for example Pasir Ris 1, which is just close by to Pasir Ris MRT. Another example would be Natural Loft in the very popular Bishan, or Park Central in central Ang Mo Kio and just a 10 minutes walk to Ang Mo Kio MRT and Ang Mo Kio Hub. But DBSS homes were not as rosy at the start as they are today. The scheme attracted a lot of outrage back in 2011. This was when a series of 5-room DBSS flats in Tampines, developed by Sim Lian Group, opened for sale at 880k, way higher than what the average family at that time could afford. As HDB did not control the pricing of DBSS units, the scheme was poorly received and subsequently suspended indefinitely. On the surface, you may think that having a private developer build your home is a good thing. But wait, this isn't always the case. They tend to like to include elements found in private condos, which can be a good or bad thing depending on your preferences. So what are these elements? I'll break them down in my likes and dislikes in the next section. To understand whether the price is crazy for a HDB flat and whether the buyer overpaid, we first need to understand the different facets of the unit. Let's break them down using the DF scale. Since I don't have the exact listing of the flat in question, I'll use a similar one I found on Property Guru for the sake of discussion. The first thing that I like about the unit is the view. The unit mentioned in the article is on the 20th floor, and should have pretty decent views like the one shown here. The second thing I like about the unit is the historical price appreciation. Using some napkin estimates since 2021, 5-room units have gone up around 400 to 500k. I recall that when I was searching for my own unit back in 2021, I came across this project. Back then, the price was around 1.1 million for a 5-room unit on a similar floor. Many people say that HDB prices have reached its peak, and paying today's prices for a HDB flat is just crazy. These are probably the same group of people saying that $1 million HDBs were crazy a couple of years back. Back then, when looking into this project in 2021 and looking for my own unit, I recall asking myself the same thing and thinking if HDB prices have already peaked. But hey, look where we are today. So now at this juncture in 2025, is this a unit that I would personally buy myself? And will the price of it keep going up? I'll talk about all that after talking about what I like and dislike about the unit. But for now, let's talk a bit about what has allowed the price of this project to appreciate so much. The first thing that I like is the proximity to both Toa Payoh and Braddell MRT stations, which is within 10 and 8 minutes of walking. At Toa Payoh MRT, there is also Toa Payoh Hub, which has plenty of food options. I didn't mark this as something that I really like because personally I prefer something much closer to either the amenities or the MRT, because I'm a lazy person. The second thing that I like about the unit is the layout and the size. It has a landscape layout and a wide frontage, giving the living room a spacious feel. Corridors are squarish and well placed as well, with functional rooms, a kitchen, dining area, washroom, yard, and a home shelter. But no layout is perfect. I'll discuss what I dislike about it in a section later on. The first thing that I'm neutral about is the age of the project. Built in 2012, this project is currently around 13 years old. If I were to buy it today, that means that it would be around 17 or even 18 years old after I reach my 5 years MOP. I don't think this will lead to any problems trying to sell it in the future, so I don't consider it a red flag. But it isn't exactly something very new either. We need to look at the bigger picture here. This is important because this project will be competing against the new BTO projects later on, and that would mean that this project is in a bit of a handicapped situation. The second thing that I'm neutral about is the DBSS status. While some people may consider this as a plus because it's done by a private developer, on paper and legally it is no different from a HDB flat in terms of the MOP, loans, grants, income ceilings. Hence, that is why I say it is something I'm very neutral about. The first thing that I dislike about the unit is the bay windows. This was built around the 2010s, which was the era of the bay windows. I don't like these bay windows because they take up floor space, they are not directly usable, and yet I still have to pay for them. In the unit, they are in all the bedrooms and even the bathrooms. You can't put a study table or bed on these bay windows without having to turn to some funky renovations. Private developers used to build bay windows in this era because they were not counted towards the GFA or gross floor area back then, but they could still be charged as part of the floor space sold to the buyers eventually. While this isn't a deal breaker because this is quite a large unit, it is something that I personally dislike. This is one of the attributes that I was talking about that is specific to private developers. Some other projects that have a bay window are the likes of Coco Palms in Pasir Ris, or even D'Leedon near Farrer Road. You find these bay windows in other DBSS projects too, such as Park Central in Ang Mo Kio and Natural Loft in Bishan. On the flip side, you won't find these bay windows in projects built and developed by HDB. These bay windows are one reason why I feel that DBSS projects and private developers as a whole are not necessarily always a good. So the second thing I dislike is the oversized balconies. This is a common issue with homes that feature a landscape living area where the balcony spans the entire frontage. Additionally, there is a second balcony in the bedroom which I feel is completely unnecessary. Even as somebody who likes having a balcony in the house, I feel that having two balconies is a complete waste of space. This again is another common issue with DBSS projects, as you find a second balcony in the likes of Park Central and Natural Loft. The third thing that I dislike is the overall Toa Payoh area. Now don't get me wrong, Toa Payoh is an excellent location in terms of demand and centrality. To put things into perspective, it is only 4 to 5 stops from Orchard and really close to town. There are also plans for a rejuvenation of the Toa Payoh area. This includes building a sports center amongst other things. While many people may try to sell the hype of the so-called rejuvenation of the Toa Payoh area, I personally am not fully convinced yet because the details are still sparse. But hey, that's just me being skeptical, so you don't have to agree with me on this. Back to the point, my main issue is with the vibe and age of the Toa Payoh estate, which is again a very personal preference.
You have a lot to learn about this town, sweetie.
The fourth thing that I dislike is the number of upcoming BTOs in the vicinity. Usually, when we talk about a private condo, a high number of BTOs coming up is something that I like to see. I say this because when these BTOs reach MOP, they bring a pool of potential upgraders and buyers to the condo. Generally, this helps with a price growth of these condo projects. However, because of what we talked about earlier, the peak is considered a DBSS project, which means that it is a HDB and not a private condo. And because of that, I remain skeptical as to whether the peak would appeal to the BTO upgraders. What is even more worrying is that these new BTOs are closer to the MRT than the peak, offering very strong competition. Besides the distance to the MRT, these new BTO projects would also be newer than the peak, making them even more appealing to the peak, which would be around 20 years old when these BTO projects MOP. The last point is that these new BTO projects will lead to more residents in the area, which could lead to more crowding and congestion.
There's too many people on this earth. We need a new play.
Okay, now let's talk about what I really dislike about the project. The biggest thing that I dislike about the project is the price. This unit sold for $1.6 million. To put things into context, previous transactions in this project was around the $1.3 million mark. And the next highest and closest is a $1.5 million transaction in January as well. And there is only one such transaction. There is also a mention of a cash over valuation of around 300k. I don't know whether the COV will be so hefty, but nonetheless, based on the past transactions, I expect some form of a COV, since the COV is based on valuation and valuation is based on past transactions. Maybe it was the renovation, a specific view, or the specific facing that commanded such a high price. But since I don't have the exact listing and details of the unit, I can't say for sure. Nonetheless, paying a high COV is something that I generally advocate to avoid. If you want to understand my thoughts on COV and how it works, I'll link my video in the description below. We've seen that the buyer paid quite a bit above the last transacted price for his unit here. But the thing is, even the last transacted prices are not cheap. So that begs the question, why are units in this project so expensive? This project has always been a pricey one, with 5-room flats here easily crossing the $1.3 million mark. Like I mentioned earlier, I attribute the high prices to the central location, proximity to 2 MRT stations, and the Toa Payoh hub. Generally, DBSS projects have always been pretty pricey, but if you look deeper and beyond the surface, these projects are usually in a mature or central location, or near an MRT station, or both. I still stand by my view that the DBSS status in isolation adds very little to the value of the project, as it is still legally a HDB and still has to follow the same rules. It is purely my speculation, but I believe that the prime location may have influenced the government to designate these land parcels and eventually the project as a DBSS one. So overall, I think that the main driver of the high prices is the prime and central location. I still doubt that the DBSS status and the private developers has much to do with it. We've seen that on one hand, DBSS projects tend to be very expensive, but on the other hand, and historically, they've always been able to generate a good return. That brings us to the final question that I need to answer, which is this something that I would personally buy for myself? The answer to that is that this is not something that I would personally purchase for myself. Firstly, this $1.6 million price tag is above the last transacted values, and I feel that means that the buyer paid over market value for the unit. But let's say we ignore the fact that this unit is overvalued. While this project has its merits, such as the layout and the very prime location, like I talked about earlier, the overall value proposition does not appeal to me personally. At $1.6 million, I might start considering a private condo instead. At this price point, a 1,000 square feet, 3-bedroom condo in the OCR or outside of Central Region could be a viable alternative. If you keep the price tag and want to switch from a HDB to a private condo, you have to make some trade-offs. The trade-offs in this case would likely be a less premium view, a less premium location, and a smaller size. Whether it is acceptable or not will depend on your personal priorities. This is a very personal choice and our views could differ, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it as well. Would you personally purchase a project at the peak? Or would you say that given this price tag, you would rather buy a private condo instead? Or maybe lower your budget as a whole and just go for a HDB somewhere else? Let me know in the comment section below. With that said, that doesn't mean that I think that HDB prices have peaked. Well, the truth is that nobody, including myself, can predict where housing prices will go in the future. But due to the large macro forces like the attractiveness of Singapore and the loose monetary policies globally over the last few decades, I wouldn't be surprised if HDB prices or even prices at the peak here continue to go up in the future. If you relate to this and feel that you're on the fence as well when it comes to paying a premium for a HDB or going for a smaller condo, you can check out my video down below where I break it down in detail. I'll cover things like the exit strategy, MOP, financials, grants, loans, and even personal preferences. More importantly, you'll be surprised to see that a private condo does not always deliver a better financial return.